Jesus was a rock star. He brought the...
So if you would, say, Jesus, help me to be what you want me to be, do what you want me to do, because people without you go to hell.
Up next, a lonely outsider, a language barrier, and a heartwarming reminder that no matter who you are, sometimes all you need is a friend. So Greg, you're saying he was just looking for a friend?
Yes, ma'am. He felt rejected, misunderstood. It's a big reason why I built the translator for him.
Mr. Godzilla, how did you feel when you first made contact with mankind?
First of all, thank you for having me on. Frankly, I was lonely. As the only giant radioactive reptile on the planet, there were not many opportunities for friendship.
When people looked at him, all they saw was a massive, rampaging, city-destroying monster.
Is that because he is a massive, rampaging, city-destroying monster?
But he's a good dude. On the inside, he's got a huge heart. When I met Godzilla, he had just destroyed my entire school. I liked him immediately.
I noticed one puny speck was not running or screaming or firing artillery shells at me. I was really quite moved.
I took the time to listen, to learn his language. I now speak Shriek fluently. Hi, can I get a spicy salmon and a dragon roll? Oh, and 7 Wells. A small side salad as well. We've been tied ever since, you know? He's got my back, I've got his. I really look up to him. T-Rex.
Dragon.
Loch Ness Monster.
2 words. 2 words. 2 words.
2 words. What is this? What is this? That's a dab. That's the worst dab I've ever seen.
2 words.
Greg has been like a big brother to me. A really, really tiny, almost microscopic big brother. And even though I do have boogers in my nose right now that are bigger than him, he has had an enormous impact on my life.
Yeah, I mean, we're homies for life. Right, big fella?
My brother from another mother.
Is that safe?
Oh, he's very gentle.
Greg? Are you okay, buddy? Greg?
Greg! Oh, poor Greg. Oh, man. We're starting a new series. It's all downhill from there, I promise. Okay. Called The Social Network. And it's kind of, we're going to be looking at potlucks in the scripture. All right? And one potluck in particular, we're going to unpack it and kind of introduce it today, but we'll be referring back to it more, because and today's message is called Power to the Potluck. All right, power to the potluck. And there were potlucks in the Bible, and there were potlucks in every church that you've probably ever been to, but there are significant problems with potlucks, okay? They're necessary, and actually, in the early church, communion was a potluck, all right? And Jesus said, do this in remembrance of me, and when they did it as a potluck. Now, today is going to be a little bit silly. It's going to be, I'm going to share some funny stories and stuff, and I'm going to draw a pretty harsh parallel between communion in the New Testament church and what a potluck is in the church. And to the New Testament church, it was more potluck than it was communion. Now, next week, in case, least you think that I am a shallow buzz brain, okay? Next week, we're going to dig into the doctrine of it, okay? And so next week we're going to We're talking about how different people look at communion and that kind of thing. So we'll do the doctrine stuff next week. But what we're going to be drawing attention to mostly this month is this idea that from the very beginning in the early church, Christians ate together. They fellowshiped together. They got together and they loved each other and they had unity. But there are always problem areas in the church. All right. And flashpoints in the church. You ever been in a church, maybe you've been around church people and you see them fighting with each other? There are two things that every church has got conflict in. All right, two ministries that inevitably will always have conflict, and they are music and food. Now, the way we deal with that is we have no worship band. The only way that the worship band has any conflict is if Inger Lisa's irritated with me. And then we just bury that deep down. So that's how we deal with that. And so we're not talking music today, but that's a major flashpoint for conflict in a church. The other one, now you may not have guessed this one, but the other flashpoint for conflict in churches, it's food. It's food. And why would that be? I think just like music, food tends to have a lot of ego associated with it, you know, and there's a lot of stress that people can put into it. Now, maybe you shouldn't be all stressed out about the food that you're bringing things, but I know that for Inger, Lisa, and I, now back in the day when, I do most of the cooking in our home now, and actually have for a long time. But Inger, Lisa used to make stuff and bring it to potlucks quite a bit. We were in another church, you know, and at the end of the night she'd be like, "Nobody ate my brownies." That person brought brownies. I ate a whole of her brownies, and nobody ate my brownies. And she'd be sad about it, and we would weep and things. And so we got, you know, it's kind of bad. And so there's also a fairness thing. You want to make sure that, like I was at the New Life Center last Wednesday night, and this dude was coming through the line, and he saw they had orange juice tonight. They had a few jugs of orange juice, and instead of using one of the cups there, he goes and he grabs his big gulp and he starts pouring the entire thing of orange juice into his big gulp. He's glub 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 glub. And what happened pretty soon was, wow! Everybody's yelling. The cook is yelling at him. The three guys behind, no, you can't do that. They're all yelling this guy down, and certainly he was being rude. Okay, but in the church, but there's a fairness issue that people have, you know. That is why, because I don't trust you greedy people, is that I've instructed our food team today to serve you the barbecue ribs, okay? Now, we're going to have plenty of ribs because we don't have as many people as I was ready for. So we can feed 100 people 3 ribs. Now, we got 12 people here today. No, okay, we probably got 50. 60, oh, that's not bad at all. We got 60 here today, so that's pretty good. But you're going to get more than 3 bones. But anyway, we're going to start off. Everybody will go through the line and get 3 bones because you got to be fair because you got to be fair and fairness because there's always one person who can be kind of stingy. All right. Now I have been traumatized when I was a young person, a young man in the church. You know, imagine 9-year-old Scott or whatever old I was. And you would go up and you would go up to get another cookie. Now these cookies were not the home baked good ones that you awesome ladies bring to the New Life Center every Wednesday. But these were, those oatmeal cookies they used to, I don't know if they sell these anymore, but they're oatmeal cookies and they got the hard glaze on them. Like not nice, soft, but it's like, anyway, that's what they were. And I got, didn't you already have a cookie, little boy? No, I think you did. It was my brother, okay? And this was a grumpy old lady, and the scowliness, that would come out. It made me feel so loved and so part of the church. And so they can be kind of stingy, or maybe you've actually been involved in food before, and you went to help, and you've got that one person. And we, don't point at the person if they're here right now, okay? Because this fits a lot of you, I'm just saying. And you got that one person that is the bossy one. They bark out orders. Back in the day, I had this one lady, it was when I was pastoring at First Assembly, I loved her, but she had to pick all of her own volunteers, because anybody that you put in there to work with, she would just beat them up because she was so bang, 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 you know. And as long as I let her pick her own volunteers, she could pick her friends, and then everything went good. But if I put somebody in there that didn't know her, oh man, don't worry, she's like that to everybody, you know. So you've got that bossy person. Now, we have had some past problems with potlucks here at The Rock, and I've been involved in lots of problem potlucks in my life and ministry, because again, if something can go wrong, it's going to go wrong in potlucks. Is anybody here? Now raise your hand, because I don't. Is anybody here for the potluck from hell? Oh yeah, we got some good potluck. We got 4 here at the potluck from. Now, if you haven't been here much, I just got to describe this really quick. Okay, what this was? It was May. Was it May? Early? I think it was May, and we had some really nice weather. So we were really excited about going out to the park with a splash pad for the kids, and we had right next to the splash pad this pavilion and stuff and so we were going to go out there. Well, the first thing that went wrong with it is that I put a map to. I gave everybody a map. That was really organized of me, right? Except it was to the wrong park in West Fargo. So that was awesome. And I didn't know till everybody had already left the church to get there. So what I have to do before the picnic is I have to go to the park that I told everybody to go to, and then be a Pied Piper and lead everybody back again, back to the right place. When I pull up to the right park, okay, I look in the pavilion, and the pavilion is here, and there's a splash pad over here. Really good idea, except it was about 50 degrees, okay? And the splash pad was on, and this poor 15-year-old kid that was in the snack shop had no idea how to turn it off. I mean, he had been asked like 40 times, please turn off that splash pad. And so people are huddled in blankets because the wind is about 40 miles an hour. It was stupid windy, okay? And it's blowing all the water off of the splash pad into the gazebo. It was the most cold, miserable thing you could ever imagine. And I was going to feed everybody off my little griddle of hot dogs. And they're using that same griddle out there right now. But I told them, get the hot dogs started early. But you're not even going to need the hot dogs because, you know, we have plenty of ribs. So it was so awful. And so guys, no matter what happens out there, it can rain on us, it can storm. It's not going to be that bad. One time I was working at a church, and we had one lady that was doing all the food, and this other. I wasn't really all that involved, but people were like going to leave the church because there was an argument over who was going to get to do Thanksgiving. Apparently that was a real big deal. It was a great honor to be the head person for the Thanksgiving meal. But at that church, all the time, one thing that happened like all the time was we would always stink and rot out of food. Everything. And then we would buy pizza, or else we wouldn't even care, you know. And I was looking for funny potluck videos, which I did find one that maybe could have shown you, but she was the venom was a little bit too much. Like she was like serious about it, and she was angry because there's never enough food at her church potlucks, and she's like, but she was a little bit like mean about it. Maybe I should have showed you. That would be kind of funny. But run out of food, and I never actually ate food at those potlucks. Now we do something else. Is we will usually have too much food, okay? And the reason why at Rock Church we have too much food is because I would rather have too much food than not enough food, okay? Because otherwise, one of you guys are gonna come, you're thinking, oh, Rock Church might be a nice church for me, and then there's not gonna be anything left except the bean salad. Nobody wants the bean salad. If you brought bean salad, I'm just joking. It's awesome. And that's all that was left for you. And so we always do like a main course, and then we augment it potlucky around the edge, and then tell you if you didn't bring anything, that's totally okay. If none of you brought everything, our menu would be boring, but we'd have enough food, all right? We'd have ribs and potato chips. That's what you'd have today. And so that happens. Now, another thing that can happen is something that happens to Ingrid Lisa quite a bit, and that's food poisoning. That can happen. I'll tell you that the ribs, I have a controlled temperature at 150 degrees. They can get down to 140 degrees before the health department could come out and check your food this afternoon. I promise you, okay? And so we're real careful about that. But watch those macaroni dishes that have been sitting in the sun all afternoon before you dig in for those church potlucks. Just saying. One time I was an intern So this is like maybe 21-year-old Scott, something like that. And I'm setting up a sound system, and it was a potluck, but this was a steak thing, and he was making steaks. And this guy came out from the kitchen who was cooking steaks for the church and cussed me out because I blew one of his breakers with the sound system. And so, yeah, that was real Jesus-y, wasn't it? You know, we'll know we are Christians by our love, by... Yeah, that's how that is. So I yelled at. So then... I had it one time, we were sitting around table, and the guy said, hey, I make this incredible soup. I'll make soup for your next church meal, and I make it all over the time. So I advertised it. I put it on I did a commercial bragging about how great this soup was going to be on Facebook. I put it on the card. And so then it was getting up to the time for church, and they had missed a couple weeks, you know, and in church, and so then I called them up that Thursday. I was leaving Friday. I don't remember where we were going, but I was leaving Friday for some place. I was going to be gone all weekend. And he says, yeah, no, I can't do that. I'm going to be out of town. I said, oh, awesome. So I had to go out of town, had to come back into town. I stayed up all night that night cooking pork butt. And that was I think the first time that I walked around saying, hey, do you like my butt? And it was pork butt. That joke just doesn't get old. I'm just sorry. But anyway, and so that happened. Another time, this is another soup story. This is back a few churches ago that I was at. And this guy said, hey, I want to make sure, if I make soup for the church, for the potluck, will you reimburse me in the past? I wasn't the senior pastor. Oh yeah, you can do that. And so he goes out, and I think he must have had like truffles in that soup or something. He comes back with a receipt from the grocery store for $350 for one roaster of soup. Really, dude? Just so you know, all of the barbecue ribs today, $310 for it could feed 100 people. That's expensive soup, man. So food is a hassle. It's a hassle for us because we have to drive across town to get to, because they don't let us set up tables here at the movie theater. Imagine how awesome that would be. They don't let us do that. That's the one thing that is kind of sad about having church in a movie theater that, you know, I love so much about it, but we can't eat here, and that's a hassle, which is sometimes a big ask. Sometimes it's, people will come to church a long time before they make that move to go join it yourself, go to a picnic or something, because that's a big ask for people to go to a place where they don't know people and they don't know each other, and to go there. Now, we are not unique in having problems with church picnics, actually. The Apostle Paul hated church picnics. Well, I don't know if he hated them or not, but he chewed out the Corinthian church about their potlucks that they would have, because they would get together and be bad. And we know that because Paul has to deal with it in the book of 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 17 through 34. We're going to take a walk through this verse. And you'll be hearing me refer to this verse actually quite a bit this month. It starts out, in the following directives, I have no praise for you. Anybody ever lead with that when they're talking to you? For your meetings do more harm than good. You ever been to a church service? I've actually run services like this that probably did more harm than good. You know, if someone who didn't know Jesus came in there, they would have walked out of that place, even more upset. So Paul has no praise for them. All right, he's sarcastic. Maybe someone led a conversation with, "Well, you are in trouble now," and now they're going to proceed to chew you out. So the Apostle Paul is venting a little bit here, and he's about to chew out the Corinthian church. He goes on to say, in the first place, I hear that when you come together, there are divisions among you. Now, in Paul's mind, there is actually no crime that could be worse. There's divisions among you. Because there's one attack that the enemy has against the Christian church that is better than any attack he could possibly do. What's that attack? If he can divide us. If he can bring disunity. Now, ironically, some churches I've been involved with, in some situations, it's the most disunified place. That's not a word at all. It's the most ununified place you ever saw. Is the church. And that's the Satan. If he's going to place a card that works all the time, it's to get disunity in the church. And then Paul goes on to say, and to some extent, I believe it. Now that's a different sermon, just so you know. If you hear a rumor about somebody, just know that there's always two sides to everything. So Paul is even allowing Maybe it's not quite as bad as what I heard, but I'm not sure that this could be completely made up. And so Paul is, he's allowing that maybe it's not quite as bad as he heard, to some extent he believes it. So, okay. Check this out. So then, when you come together, it is not the Lord's Supper you eat. See, they were having communion. That was the thing. It's not the Lord's Supper you're having. It's not the Lord's Supper you eat. For when you are eating, some of you go ahead with your own private suppers. And as a result, one person remains hungry, the other gets drunk. Just so you know, in the Assemblies of God, we don't get drunk. Okay, I'm just saying. Okay, that won't happen here. So there's no Heineken. Now, if you're in Europe going to church someplace, they might have a cooler of Heineken, but not here. I think I can lose my credentials now for that. They just made that a little tougher. But we are really good at having private suppers. And we're exclusive. Yes, snooty that dude is. Now, this is funny, but this is, I'm going to share this with you, okay? I'm just going to be completely straight with you. I think it was a year or two ago, maybe, at least maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But we were having a meal at Bonanzaville, and I am always a little late because I got to pack up stuff, okay? And so I walk into Bonanzaville and I do my circuit around the place. And I see a lady sitting and she's got 3 kids there and she's by herself at a table. And she walks up and I sit down and I come to realize that nobody has talked to her. It was her first time. And she was the very rare first time visitor that made the drive across town. And she made the drive across town, sat at a table, and nobody talked to her. Nobody talked to her. And now, did she come back to church? Nope. Never saw her again. Why? Because she didn't feel part of the family. And this was happening in the Corinthian church. It was exclusive. People were coming together and they're getting together with people they knew, and they were in their cliques and they were in their groups. And that was not, Paul was mad at it. He says that it is private suppers. When we go and have a picnic, we all tend to do this. I have done this. You have done this. But we go to a group, a church event, and we have a private supper. You get together with 4 people that you know really well. Your family sits together, and we have a private supper. Look at this. As a result, one person goes hungry, another gets drunk. Paul goes on to say, he says, don't you have homes to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God by humiliating those who have nothing? What does that mean to us? If go home, those friends that you know super well, visit them on your own time, okay? Your family who's going to be at the church meal today, man, have them over to your house some other time. Will you despise the church of God? This might be a little tough, okay? And I apologize for that, but I can tell you how it grieves a pastor's heart and how much more my Jesus' heart to walk in to find a young mom who nobody had talked to. And that's, we can despise it and we humiliate somebody who have nothing. Now that lady, to be honest with you, she didn't have nothing financially, because she went on to tell me that her husband was a doctor and was on call that weekend and stuff. So how did she have nothing? She had nothing relationally in that room right there. She had nothing relationally. She was alone. It took a lot of bravery on her part to attend a church meal, and nobody talked. And so she was kind of humiliated. Now I totally get that. This is one reason why I do not like wedding receptions, because I'm always concerned about who I'm going to sit with. I hate to be the person who sits down first and then nobody sits by me. I also hate to be the guy who sits at a table and then somebody else's friends come in and it's obvious they wished you had not sat down because they did. I've been that guy before. I've been in the room in a social gathering where I'm talking to somebody and a colleague, and all of a sudden somebody else comes up who's more interesting, and all of a sudden I'm looking at this dude's back Instead of, how they didn't circle up, he just turned his back to me, and there it was, Another time I'm standing in a group and I'm talking to a brilliant young millennial guy, and I was thinking, man, I could be a blessing to this guy. I've been in ministry a while. If you need anything, I'd love to, whatever. And then somebody else comes up, and again, I get two backs to me, right? Guys, I get being rejected, all right? I totally get that. But when you are on your home turf, when you're in your home turf, and if you come to the Rock all the time, this is your home turf. It is our responsibility that nobody feels the way I felt in those situations. Okay? Now, people are going to be snubbed in our church. We're human beings, and it's going to happen. But Rock Church, let's not despise the church of God. Let's not make Jesus look bad because we are rude and we are snooty, or do despise the church of God by humiliating those who have nothing. When the back was turned to me, I was humiliated. I was indignant. I was like, how dare you treat me like that? I'm not going to come back to this again. What shall I say to you? Shall I praise you? Certainly not in this matter. See, Paul is just seething. He's angry, okay? He's emotional. Certainly not. And when he had given thanks. Now Paul is going to tell you about Jesus' communion. And when he gave thanks, he broke the bread, saying, "This is my body, which is given for you in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me. For whenever you eat this bread or drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." And so Paul goes on to say that when you do it, look at what Jesus did again. This isn't just a potluck. This is holy. Now we have taken, and we're gonna receive communion together next week, and we're gonna do it multiple times this month. And because we're gonna be focusing on communion, because it is this, but that is symbolic. It is symbolic of what that Corinthian church should have been doing in the potluck. All right? We're going to be unpacking this all month, but see if you can grab a hold of this early on. Paul, it wasn't that they were not being ceremonial enough. That wasn't it. It was they were excluding people. It was that their potlucks were private parties. It wasn't helping the church of God. You see, church, if you come to church every week, if you call Jesus the Lord of your life, we have a core value here at Rock Church. It's really fun to chat with you this morning, Brian, about the core values. This is already in my notes before we chatted, just so you know. We have a core value at Rock Church, and it is that the church doesn't exist for us. We exist for the church. We are spiritual contributors, not spiritual consumers. The church does not exist for us. We are the church, and we exist for the world. If you need your social needs met, do that at home if you love Jesus. But when you come to the church, honor God by breaking bread. How does that mean? Jesus' body was broken. God wants us to be broken for the people around us. When somebody comes to church that is farther away from God than we are, Jesus wants us to be broken with them. What that means is that I'm going to make myself vulnerable for them to hurt me. Okay? I'm going to walk up to somebody knowing they might reject me. People reject me all the time. I know that's surprising to you. Don't laugh at me. People reject you, and that's part of being broken. I'm going to go and I'm going to make my vulnerable to being hurt by engaging somebody. Because you don't know if they're going to reject you or not. But that's not the point. This is our home turf. It's our job to be the reachers. Jesus' blood was poured out. Jesus had grace that forgave. And he wants us to be a church that when we go, that there are no divisions around us because we're going to give grace to each other. See, when we take communion, and we're going to unpack this more next week, but when we receive communion and we do that in a ceremonial way, we are making a pledge to our God that I will be broken like you were broken. I'm eating of your body, God. I'm taking part in your brokenness. God, I drink the cup. Lord, I drink the blood of the covenant. I receive that grace and I give that grace. That's the commitment we're making. But we act it out. That's the symbolic part. But there's a real part to this that is even more important. Because what good is symbolism if you've lost the symbolism in the ceremony, okay? I mean, you can be a spoiled brat, old fart Christian and take communion all the time and push people away from Christ, and you miss the point completely. You miss the point completely. I have one cry in my heart, and that cry is that we would be really good at loving people. We've been praying this for a while. It's been something that I've been preaching on. And God, if there's one thing that we could do well, dear Jesus, help us to love people well. That when people come to Rock Church, that they're going to feel loved. There's this old song that they'll know we're Christians by our love. That verse that comes from, I used to read that like, if I love people who don't know Jesus, if I love people who are far away from God, then they're going to know they're going to love my Jesus too. But that's not what that verse says. The verse says, you will know they are Christians, and the reason why I never knew this is because the song leaves this part out, but they will know you are Christians. How? By how you love each other, is what the Bible verse says. They're not going to know that we're Christians by how we love them. They're going to know we're Christians by how we love each other. That's why the Apostle Paul was so angry. That's why he was so angry, is because he knew that the most important thing that we, the church, can do for a world that doesn't know Jesus and is going on to an eternity apart from Him, the most important thing is that we be unified, that we are broken for each other. Lord, we are forgiving and full of grace for each other. It is the number one, absolute most important thing that we can do for our Jesus is to love each other. It's the most important thing we can do. And our cry, the heart's cry that is in my heart is, dear God, help me. Help us, Jesus, to love well. To be quick to forgive, and to be quick to be willing to be broken. To be willing to be broken. This is a big deal, you guys. So this month we're looking at this, it's called the social network. It's my belief the most important thing for us to do is to create an environment where there's where we become the most important social network, because people whose lives are comfortable and easy are harder to witness to. And so my prayer is, God, I pray that you would give us the people who are disenchanted, the people who feel like they're rejected, the ones who have a felt need, and help us to love them well, God. Now, if you want to come to a church where everybody looks good, you want to come to a church that is the people are good and they're perfect and they never reject you, they never hurt you, they look right, they smell right, this is never going to be the church for you because you're here. But it's my personal core value is, God, that we would be a church for people that need love. People who don't know they need Jesus, it's not who we're after. So help me. Help me. Come to the meal today. Get to know some people and get good at loving each other. Would you close your eyes with me? Dear Jesus, I just pray, God, that you would reach into our heart. And as we prepare to receive the offering in just a minute, God, we want to offer up much more than our finances, Lord. I offer you my life. Lord, I offer you my body. And when I say my body, I offer my safety. God, that people can reject me, and I'm still going to keep reaching out, Lord. Lord, I promise to make myself vulnerable to being hurt in your house for your glory. Lord, I pray, God, that you would reach inside of me and that I would have a forgiving heart. Lord, that you would help me to pour out the grace and forgiveness that you have given me, that I would never be so proud, Lord, to be angry and to not forgive someone who's hurt me when you have forgiven me of so much. I don't want to be that guy. So Jesus, please come. Please come, Lord, and search my heart. God, I give you my whole heart today. All that I am, the beginning and the end, own me today in Jesus' name. Lord, hear the cry of my heart. Teach me to love and to love well and to love like you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Jesus was a rock star.